To do that, the contact number is always 1-800-848-9222. That's 1-800-9222. Now, if you'd like to send me an email, we do get some of these guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, the audience, for your guest suggestions. My email is just simply drsky, Dr. Sky, at wabcradio.com. And why not listen to the many previous examples of the Dr. Sky experience and all the other great hosts here 24/7 on 77 WABC. Simply going once again to wabcradio.com and redappleaudionetworks.com. Thanks to our helmsman, as we like to think of this, in the theater of the mind of radio, our navigators, we call them helmsmen, Bill and Tony, navigating this incredible signal, ladies and gentlemen, across the nation, around the world, and I'm sure with our topic this morning for 2 hours, with your participation, even out into the depths of the universe. As we move into the holiday season, ladies and gentlemen, news alerts all over the world talking about the great deception of the story of the UFOs. A recent film that's been out, and one that's, of course, very current in the mainstream, is a documentary entitled The Age of Disclosure, filmed by Dan Farah, visible on Netflix, that is, in certain theaters across the nation, and I'm sure around the world, receiving lots of praise. But again, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't seen it, and as your host, I can say I have not at this point in time. But what's more important than that is someone who knows this particular story and has been documenting these particular stories himself. And with a brief introduction of our guest, Darcy Weir, the documentary filmmaker who over the past 2 decades has explored some of the most intriguing and thought-provoking subjects of our time, including UFOs, cryptids, and Bitcoin. With more than 15 feature-length documentaries available on Amazon Prime, Tubi, and Apple, his work continues to shed new light on these mysteries and make them more accessible to the general public. The project delves into the history of ESP and psychics, uncovering their fascinating connection to the UFO phenomenon and the broader story of non-human intelligence. You can find his work, that is, also on Twitter and YouTube, and at Occult Chinese and at Instagram. His website promotes all the time. We're here on the air with him, occultjourneys.com. A special thank you to our special guest, Darcy. Good morning. Thank you for being up with us. We continue to open people's minds and welcome them, that is, into our homes and into our minds. Thanks for being with us. How are you?
I'm great, Dr. Sky. Yeah, thanks for starting the morning with me.
Well, absolutely. And, the big attention, we're reading this all over. Even if you're a person, ladies and gentlemen, that has minimal interest in this subject, you're inundated with information about a new documentary, such as promoted and mentioned, The Age of Disclosure, filmed by Dan Farah. And you're fortunate enough to have seen it. And I just wanted to go right to it, just to get your analysis of what's in it, tell people about it, and your interpretation as one who delves deep into the subject of the UFO conspiracy.
Yeah, I think the film is a really good recap of all of the things that have been happening in terms of the cover-up over the decades, as well as what's going on in Congress with lawmakers and how these whistleblowers like Lou Elizondo, Chris Mellon, David Grush, and all of these, there's 34 high-ranking officials of some regard featured in the film, whether that's an individual who's the FAA that says these are a flight risk, intelligence, military members, scientists. It's a pretty wide gambit, and then congressmen and congresswomen. So I can.
Oh, wait a minute! I got one for you. Wait a minute! Don't go anywhere.
Shoot away any questions you have about it.
Yeah, I just wanted to hear your general impression, because reading different reviews, I don't always believe everything I read, especially on the internet. Many people say they like it. Many people say, simply pay-per-view. And some say, not necessarily happy with it in their opinion. They're describing it as, well, another, moneymaker for people with things that we're not bringing any new information in there. So again, not to knock it, I haven't seen it, but your general assessment of what's in there, and maybe if there are some revelations that people don't know about or didn't know, tell us.
I got one For you coming.
I think,
It's coming. You ready?
There's definitely
It's coming.
testimony that I've never heard of before. So,
Is a brick of $100,000. You see that?
He talks about working within the Air Force for decades and knowing of an Air Force.
There goes a nice brick.
Special access program that the public doesn't even know about. So that was a pretty big one. Yeah, and I think that's somebody we should hang our hat on and say this is a credible individual. Colonel James
There goes a nice brick of $100,000. You see that?
With the UAP, and how news testimony like this.
That's what real money looks like.
Never been heard before, and basically,
that's what real money looks like. Not no.
Hear all of these pilots, like we've heard.
Not no bullshit donation.
David Fravor, Alex Dietrich.
I don't need no donations. Keep your donations. Keep them. Keep them in your pocket.
It's like when you watch this film, it's like a never-ending cascade of credible testimony. And I think that is something that's important because you might watch most documentaries, and even some of mine, you're going to get 5, 6 people, a couple different histories.
We have the complaint department that's taking complaints. It's called the Baby Shark Complaint Department.
But in this,
you can complain to Baby Shark over there.
A whole army of people that are going on the record and saying this is real. You got Marco Rubio, you got James Clapper, Dan Crenshaw, Mike Gallagher, Mike Rounds, all speaking to this being a national security threat. Brett Federson from the FAA speaks to the national security and that it's, we're unequivocally not alone in the universe. Mike Gall, the quote from him, if this is a foreign adversary, this is the greatest intelligence failure in history.
Interesting.
Yeah. And Fravor, he just talks about how this thing that he saw went from 0 to 200 miles per hour in, seconds, and what that would do to the human body would just annihilate it, turn it to paste, the G forces that would be experienced.
Right, no human could survive that, obviously. That's interesting.
Yeah, so we're not, when we have credible pilots and witnesses like that are chasing these things and seeing technical feats that are beyond our comprehension, that's what has people convinced. This is not of our planet, not of our world. Maybe this is non-human.
Yeah, it's amazing. Folks, if you're fascinated by this cover of the UFO story for well over 80 years, and you're just saying, wait a minute, if they told us that this was real, I wouldn't lose my composure, or some people might say, well, I thought this was probable all along. But our very special guest, Darcy Weir, he's a documentary filmmaker. He's joined us before, and we're privileged and honored to have him here. Your contact and questions to get in on the conversation, 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. Darcy, this is fascinating because, again, we don't want to tell people they must go out and see something, obviously, if they feel they don't want to. But in the spirit of what you were
this is my $100,000 stack. Are you jealous? Are you jealous? Oh, look at the little baby. The little baby is jealous. I have the Baby Shark Complaint Department up there. Here's some crayons, and you could write your complaint to the Baby Shark Department.
Basically, anybody coming out of service to the Pentagon.
He also takes your tears, so you could send them your tears also.
And Lou Elizondo speak of the fact that they tried to take all of this credible evidence. Like I'm guessing when they were part of this ATIP OSAP program, they cataloged and had all this proof that there was anomalous objects interacting with our planet, our military, yada yada.
Hey, how does it feel? Why don't you answer this question? How does it feel to sit there with empty pockets?
They're higher up. Chain of command.
How does it feel to sit with empty pockets?
You know, this is to the devil, and those are demons.
Oh my God.
So you shouldn't be following this anymore. And
Oh, yeah.
that speaks to just kind of this religious stigma that's within that culture, that environment, and it's impeding the scientific study and progress of this going public and becoming more of a mainstream topic. So that was an interesting part of the documentary that they unveil.
Sure.
You know, there's things that they highlight about the phenomenon that's observed by all these different walks of life. So they talk about the 5 observables that make something anomalous. So craft are often seen, you know, with David Fravor's testimony of this thing going 0 to 200 miles in a second. That would be like that hypersonic, instantaneous acceleration behavior. So those are the 2 observables, exactly the top 2 there. They also talk about low observability of the phenomenon. So it seems like these things remain shrouded or cloaked most of the time because they're operating some kind of technology that seems to have this time or like reality bubble around it that allow them to fly around and not feel the effects of gravity and all that stuff. And due to the fact that it has this surrounding them, you don't even know they're in the sky.
That is amazing. Yeah, I mean, in addition to your great website, and I encourage people to go to occultjourneys.com and stay tuned with us, ladies and gentlemen. Your questions and comments are much appreciated here. That's what makes the Dr. Sky experience, I think, a complete circle. But also, Luis Elizondo's book, I was pretty impressed by the book, and people who may not seen the book or heard of it, it's called Imminent, Inside the Pentagon's Hunt for UFOs. Who was he? The former head of the Department of Defense's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. Hard enough to say once. That's a lot of words. But I thought that was also rather revealing. And all the things that we're hearing about from you, our special guest, Darcy Weir, talking about the age of disclosure. In simple English, when the heck are we ever going to find out really what's going on here? I mean, that's the most ridiculous question any host could ask a guest, but it's the same question everybody out there is probably wondering, you know, for so long. 80 years, and I can go back in history with you. We can. You know, we have 2 hours here to discuss this and open our minds. Way back into the 1800s, way back into the days of the Egyptians. I mean, all this stuff seems to be an ongoing thing. Such a tightly held, you know, secret, supposedly, of what the real origin is. So, again, thanks for being here. But start off by telling us, I read your bio, and you in your own words, what got you so fascinated by all this stuff? When? Just talk about that a minute, the personal side of yourself.
Well,
this is a great story.
You know, I've always been interested
in
science fiction and fringe ideas growing up as a kid.
Where's the Jealous Boys, huh?
And stuff like that. You know, on in life, you're walking through Cole's Notes or one of these bookstores and you see a book that is penned by... who's the guy that created X-Files? His name is
it's me right now. I apologize to the audience.
But the creator...
Yeah, that's a phenomenal television series. I mean, wow, that really opens up people's minds. But again, Darcy, really just stimulating our, you know, curiosity. But again, the answers to what the heck is behind all this, well, everybody looks at government and says, for some reason, they don't want to tell us the truth about this. And, well, please continue. It's just a fascinating story.
Yeah, I mean, what is behind all this? I think there's multiple things that are posed within the phenomenon. People think that it could be an interdimensional intelligence. It could be an extraterrestrial intelligence. That's the classic one from another star, from another planet. There are problems with that. Obviously, to be interstellar, you'd have to figure out a way to travel faster than light. because that's
Oh, these are some
huge
great
load.
cookies.
You have to be living for thousands upon thousands of years to really make that journey worthwhile. But then there's the X-ray Tempestre model, which was posed. It's kind of the crypto-terrestrial theory that maybe there is something that is non-human that has lived here in our oceans or in our solar system since we have.
Now, that one really gets me going because I think as we discussed this, so many of in the congressional side have talked about this. Representative Burchett has talked about the possibility of what? More and more evidence from even our nuclear submarines and other nations' submarines seeing things traversed by them at speeds that are just unbelievable, considering, let's say, a nuclear submarine's moving. We don't know the total, speed. Maybe alleged, 30 knots underwater. Who knows? But
39.
right, something going what? Triple digits by you? I mean, that has to be something that's alarming. But in most of those cases, there's never been some sort of an attack on any of the submarines. It just seems to go by on its own way as if it wasn't even there. So that's fascinating stuff. Tell us about that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the word that I named my documentary about USOs, unidentified submerged objects, is called transmedium, and that is one of the 5 observables that are outlined in Dan Farrow's The Age of Disclosure. Transmedium is where we see one of these UFOs seemingly travel between the different mediums on our planet, which is either the gaseous sky to the ocean, and there's no friction, there's no explosion, there's no real effect on the craft. It just seems to keep going at its momentum, at its speed, and vice versa. It can go from the ocean to the sky and then to space. We don't have any craft like that. I mean,
none that I know of. Right? That's amazing.
Yeah, and I think Elon Musk must be eating his heart out when he hears about those.
Absolutely.
So, transmedium is something that has been really reported well. The old UFO researchers in this field, like my friend Richard Dolan, who was in the documentary I made, talks about decades and decades and decades of sightings where UFOs seemingly come in and out of the oceans. And I think when Navy submariners are talking about this phenomenon as well, like the XOs on the bridge shouting out, "We got a fast mover," and it's traveling over 300 knots, which in miles is like 600 miles plus.
Totally amazing.
It's insane. There's nothing like that we have in our arsenal. We do have nuclear torpedo. Or sorry, we have torpedoes. I don't want to say nuclear and scare everybody here, but we have torpedoes that can create supercavitation, and that basically is a envelope of air bubble that's created around the torpedo from shooting that in a burst out the tip of it, so it can cut through the water quicker. But the top speed is maybe 150, 120 miles per hour. So we're dealing with something that's going way, way faster than that. And
yeah, and also the Russians, they claim, have something called an AI-guided torpedo, long in length. I don't know, maybe it's 40, 50, 60 feet long. But Darcy, they're saying that can go underwater at triple digits in knots in the water, and that it's capable of, deploying a 100 megaton, nuclear warhead at its tip, meant to go into harbors and create a gigantic radiation tsunami, not to scare people. But all this technology, it's so amazing as to where we get it from. And that's the whole reason to discuss this and the documentary that we're talking about. And you're doing great in describing what's going on with the Age of Disclosure, in your opinion, because so many of these mysteries, people sum it up and say, hey, they can switch on and off our nuclear weapon systems at will. Maybe, like you mentioned, interdimensional beings. Some even go so far to say demons from above. And wow, Project Bluebeam, going into that, talking about, the governments of the world creating a fake alien invasion. I mean, that may sound a little bizarre to people. And then with this documentary, some people's responses are simply this. And here's one quote.
The early adopters are going to go spend that money. You know, they got to see it first, but eventually it's going to come down in price for rental or you know, go free on some service. And I'm sure most people will enjoy something in that film. Something in that film they'll be able to take away. Yeah.
Absolutely. Everybody has an opinion. And we appreciate that here on the Dr. Sky Experience. And to remind everybody, you know, you still have time, ladies and gentlemen, to get in. Why not? That's what the show is all about. You, the caller, and we talk with you, ladies and gentlemen, about these subjects. We love to have a dialogue, and we love to do it with critical thinking. And certainly those are the things we just ask that our callers just stay on measure as far as the topic. And later, I promise, as always, at the Dr. Sky Experience, we will go and do a very detailed sky report for the end of November and into the early part of December. And the subject that both Darcy and I will talk about is the story of Comet 3I Atlas, not only from what the theories are, but the true observational side of where the comet is in the morning sky now. For those of you that might have a larger telescope or some way to see it, because as they say, it ain't coming back, right, Darcy? For hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of years, a strange interloper into the deep part of our solar system. Fascinating stuff. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. And again, tell us your website and how they can get in touch with you on the other social media platforms and like the YouTube and Instagram. Just give us that information again.
Oh, yeah, sure. If people want to reach out or see stuff that I'm posting about and discussing online, on Twitter, it's @OccultJourneys, YouTube channel, @OccultJourneys. I've also partnered with Watch Mojo, and we're doing bi-weekly shows and little documentary releases on this subject with the Unveiled podcast by Rob Flitz. And I've got a website, occultjourneys.com. Feel free to hit me up on my socials.
Well, what we want to do when we come back after this particular break is go into the many documentaries that you have out there. As you've described some, we talk about the transmedium, the fast movers, and USOs. That, to me, Darcy, is so fascinating. I mean, and there's stories going way back, even 50 years ago, I believe, up in Halifax in Nova Scotia, in which the first real documented sightings that were actually put down on paper and reported.
Oh, yeah. Well, we finished eating the cookies.
years, you still watch him, but every time you put on one of his movies, you just go like, oh, this guy. And you remember how great he was, and it's tainted.
Download all of Red Apple Media's podcast right now through your favorite podcast platform.
This is the Dr. Sky Experience. Always look to the sky. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Hello, I'm Seth Shostak, Senior Astronomer at the SETI Institute, and my job is to look for ET by trying to eavesdrop on signals aliens may be sending our way. And Dr. Sky is sending signals your way on the Dr. Sky Show.
Don't you believe in flying saucers, they asked me. Don't you believe in telepathy, in ancient astronauts, in the Bermuda Triangle? How about life after death? No, I replied. No, 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 and again, no. One person recently goaded into desperation by the litany of unrelieved negation and burst out and said, don't you believe in anything? Yes, I said, I believe in evidence. I believe in evidence and reasoning confirmed by independent observers. I believe anything, no matter how wild and ridiculous, there is evidence for it.
He doesn't believe in anything. Look at that.
The firmer and more solid the evidence will have to be. A quote, ladies and gentlemen, from the late great Isaac Asimov. And for our New York area listeners, did you know in the 1970s you could have called him up? His number was listed simply in the white pages, and I had the privilege and honor of doing that. And who knows, maybe you did too. Our special guest on the Dr. Sky Experience for the length of a 2-hour show, Darcy Weir. He's a documentarian, and so much more on the story of UFOs and many, many other subjects. And here we go, ladies and gentlemen, 34 minutes after the hour. We now begin with our callers. Let's say good morning to Robert in Philadelphia. Robert, good morning. Happy Thanksgiving week to you and weekend. How you doing?
Hey, Dr. Sky, and to your guest, Mr. Weir, I really appreciate the work you do, and I hope you guys had a wonderful holiday yesterday. I was listening to what you guys were talking about, specifically when it came to the things that these things do, like moving 40 miles across the map in 6 seconds or shooting straight up. How that might affect a living being inside of that, and it would lead me to believe that the smaller ones might be entirely automatic and might not be subject to that. But the larger ones that have been doing the same things, and as Mr. Weir was talking about, the transmedium, going from one medium to another effortlessly, it sounds to me like there's some kind of anti-grav force field involved. Now, I do a lot of reading on this, and I have found that there are two commonalities when it comes to talking about things like this, and it doesn't matter whether you're talking about the Incas, the ancient Japanese, the Egyptians, Greco-Romans, and it's really outlined beautifully in the Veda text in the Mahabharata. The commonality is gyroscopes or gyroscopic structures and the element mercury. And I'm wondering, because it's hard to find any like real documented, peer-reviewed scientific analysis of that type of thing. But have you heard anything about what that might have to do? If not mercury, muscovium, whatever. But there's something that's been around for a long time that might be the key to this whole thing. You know what I mean?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, Robert, thanks for asking those questions, or talking about that. I did actually make a documentary called Secret Space UFOs, Rise of the TR-3B. And the TR-3B is fabled to be this either Northrop Grumman or Skunk Works super secret anti-gravity craft.
Amazing.
Supposedly, it was a big black triangle that had on either corner. Now, this is what a whistleblower back in the day named Edgar Rothschild Boucher discussed in the public. He was saying that this craft basically was in the works at Area 51 and other places in the third-party military contractor arena for about a decade and a half. And object up to something like 80%. So they got almost 100% there, but the TR-3B, was supposed to be massive. It was supposed to carry tons of personnel, like a tank, if you will, to space from the ground. And
That's incredible, Darcy.
That is
Robert,
fascinating.
this is fascinating stuff, and I know you have an affiliation with the aerospace world, so please continue with your question, comment, or observation here, because what we're hearing here is amazing.
I'll just finish there because I had always pictured like a gyroscopic structure within liquid mercury, but a gyroscopic structure made of super cool mercury is an entirely different thing for me to read about tonight, and I really appreciate that. And I'm going to leave it there. You guys have a great weekend, and I love the show. Thank you,
Well,
Mr.
thank you,
Ware.
Robert. Always appreciate your commentary. What you're saying, Darcy, to me is most fascinating. The TR-3B, we've seen what it looks like, I guess, artist renditions of this particular craft. But let me ask you straight up, because the audience may not be familiar with this. March 13th, 1997, here in Phoenix, Arizona, where I'm broadcasting from, we had this most incredible sighting of, quote, the Phoenix Lights. In your opinion, any connection to such a device or a craft like that with the same kind of technology that you're describing?
Yeah. Some people have said, well, maybe that was a TR-3B because it was a massive triangle, right? But the thing that is, a little bit off about that is that it was too big. Like, from reports that have come in throughout the years, James Fox, UFO film director, made I Know What I Saw, which is a History Channel documentary on the Phoenix Lights. And, that thing traveled across 2 states. It went from, I believe, Arizona, or through Nevada, and then stopped in Arizona. And as it passed over the 2 states, thousands of people were observing this. Many hundreds and hundreds of calls to the authorities, to the police. And many of them said that they said it was the size of like a football field.
Well, you're absolutely right, Darcy. And a good aviation friend of mine who had thousands and thousands of hours behind the, controls of 747s, 727s, and other military aircraft, he calls me, and my silly story, I'll be brief, to the audience, they may have heard this. I'm watching television of Seinfeld that night, nothing wrong with the show, and my phone's going off the hook. In those days, we really didn't have cell phones, so I was like, what? Did you see it? I go, no. And this man is describing what you're saying, Darcy. He described it as being 5,000 feet long, and the thing had no propulsion noise of any kind. Now that, I take from a guy who knows aircraft and sizes better than somebody who'd say, well, I think, everybody's observation is important, but how about that one? Isn't that incredible, just to go on with the massive size that you report?
Absolutely. And what I'll say, just to sort of finish up on how whatever the Phoenix Lights was not a TR-3B. So TR-3B, or something that's probably ours, that's a reverse engineered big black triangle, kind of an ARV, alien reproduction vehicle, as it's been coined. That will have 3 lights and then a big light in the middle. So 3 lights being 1 on each corner. Those are the thrusters. And then the massive light in the middle, probably whatever that anti-gravitic, engine to the craft is. So I don't know. TR-3B is just like a fabled name, but I think at this point, if these contractors have really synthesized the technology, maybe half the, weird black triangles that people record in infrared or night vision that are whizzing around in space, way above passenger jets and stuff, maybe those are like autonomous craft that are just running missions and, doing tactical reconnaissance and all kinds of stuff, shooting around the planet.
But it begs the question, and I'm sure the listeners out there, nobody can really answer this, then if that is true with the description of the propulsion system, where did we get that kind of technology in rapid form? Because that in itself describes something that's really sci-fi-like, and those descriptions that I had, not, beleaguering doing too much on the Phoenix Lights. It was something that I did not see, but so many people did. And to this day, it happens to be in my mind. Quick comment from you before we go to the break. One of the most unresolved, incredible sightings in one of the most populated parts of the country. And so many people believe it was truly an interstellar, multidimensional craft. And others believe simply that it's something along the lines of what you were describing on a much more massive scale. So, final comment on that before we go to this next break. And then, ladies and gentlemen, Ted in Forest Hills, Mark in Arizona, and you, ladies and gentlemen, at 1-800-848-9222. We'll do our very best to get you on the air with our special guest, Darcy Weir. Finishing up on that, please respond.
Yeah, I'd say the other sort of anomaly about it is that people that looked up, sometimes they said that it almost seemed as if they could see the stars right through the material of the craft.
Exactly. Yes.
So
exactly.
I don't think that could be a very top secret metamaterial technology where it's reflecting whatever is above in the sky below so that you stay concealed. Maybe they work maybe the American aviation contractors figured that out, but I doubt it. In the 90s, I don't know. I'm skeptical that they could make something that big, hover silently, and show all of these cloaking characteristics and such. It's a pretty big one, and even the Senator Fife Symington came out and said, I saw it with my very own eyes from my home. It was out there above the mountains, and it blew my mind, but I had to come out to the public and say, nothing to see here, folks, to prevent panic.
Well, more with Darcy Weir, ladies and gentlemen, and your questions and comments on the Dr. Sky experience when we continue.
This is 77 WABC Newsroom Extra. Dean Fullahan, a longtime Politico, says he's excited to become Mayor-elect Mamdani's deputy mayor on New Year's Day. Tells Eyewitness News that he relishes the challenge of delivering on the promises Mamdani made.
There's nothing that the mayor-elect has put forward that I don't believe in and believe is achievable. It starts with a complete belief that we can actually achieve those things and address this crisis.
And Fullahan believes affordability is the new administration's greatest challenge.
We have to achieve those policy goals, so you should judge us on that. You should judge us on the daily operation of the city. You should judge us on whether we're protecting New Yorkers.
The 74-year-old brings decades of experience in the Assembly and at City Hall under former Mayor Bill de Blasio. Noam Layton, WABC News. This is the Dr. Sky experience. Always look to the sky. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Hi, I'm Travis Walton, author of Fire in the Sky and my experience as an abductee back in 1975. And you are listening to the Dr. Sky Show.
You see a lot of UFOs with closed eyes and an open mind. So said author Toba Pita. As we continue at 46 minutes after the hour, ladies and gentlemen, Darcy Weir, a very special guest. As you can check his website, occultjourneys.com. Let's continue with the callers. Let's say good morning to Ted in Forest Hills. Thanks for your patience. And how are you this morning? Ted, do we have you on the line? Please continue. Okay, let's go to Mark in Arizona. Good morning, Mark. How are you doing this morning? You're on with Darcy.
Good morning. Good morning, Darcy. A very interesting show. And I think one thing you need to all think about, it's like the dog chasing his tail all the time. Every time there's a UFO incident, we all get a little crazy about it. But I'd like to add that I got to Roswell in '97 for the 50th anniversary. That started my trend. I never had the opportunity to meet Lynn and Moulton Howe. They stayed with different times at my home. Stan Freeman. And then I went to Aztec to visit what happened there in the 60s, or the 40s, I'm sorry. I met with a gentleman by Lonnie Zamora in Socorro, New Mexico, he was a police officer in Socorro, like 64. He was on the Unsolved Mysteries twice. So I've had a whole time to analyze all these things. And I also witnessed the Phoenix Lights interesting situation. I know the doctor that examined Travis Walton when he was first picked up and what was in his stomach, what wasn't in his stomach. So I have a little bit of interest in what's going on. But I really am concerned that most people have never hit the point, or they dodged the point about the demons part. It's pretty much biblical if you want to know what the answers, what they could be. Not all of it is, but the demons that we have that are creating shit for our government are people like that's in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
CIA, or it wasn't Brennan's the other guy that's always in trouble with lying on testimonial. The bad guy, what's his name? You know what I'm talking about. The guy, the funny-looking old man that's going to jail soon. But I think the real thing we need to be concerned about.
You got any more complaints? You can complain to the Baby Shark department.
They never have told you anything. And it's always a psyop here, a psyop there. So, Darcy, my question for you is, are you tired of chasing the dog's tail, or watching the dog chase his tail and never catching it? What say you?
Wow, Darcy, that's a lot to go on there, but go ahead.
Mark, thank you for all that preamble. It does sound like you're tired of chasing the tail. For me, I think people do get a bit confused when this psyop word is thrown around so much. And it sounds like just in this case, in terms of the documentary, Age of the Disclosure, and all of these people coming forward and giving their testimony, what you have to understand is these people come from backgrounds where they've been exposed to UAP, UFO reality, and they actually think the psyop being played.
They've been exposed to UFO reality. You hear that?
So they're actually rebelling against their own institutions by being whistleblowers, going against the grain and saying there's something very real here. We have to address it. And I don't think that's a psyop. I think there's a lot of paranoia.
Nothing like being exposed to UFO reality.
Psyop to themselves, they start labeling everything as psyop, and they might need to go see a shrink. But in this case, I think the real psyop is the fact that we've been lied to for 80 years now. If you've spoken with Linda Moulton Howe and Stanton Friedman, I actually interviewed Stanton for one of my first documentaries called Being Taken.
An interesting gentleman. We had the pleasure, too, not to cut you short there, Darcy, but we had the pleasure of interviewing him at one of the space conventions just before he passed away, and he was so steadfast. And Mark, I think you probably know it since you met him. He was so steadfast about his Roswell story that it really illuminated me. I was like, wow, this stuff's fascinating. But sadly, he passed away just, about 4 or 5 years ago, and what a great contributor to the UFO story. Please continue, Darcy. I just wanted to jump in on that.
Yeah, I will just say, I understand your argument that maybe we're getting the best truth from the experiencers and the original, let's call them the OGs of the UFO disclosure arena, which usually populate all of the conferences, especially the Area 51 conference that you traveled to and met with some of these people. But we're living in a new age. We are living in a modern age of new people coming forward to lend more
Look at that.
credibility.
Modern art
than
masterpiece.
just those earlier people that, in all honesty, they seem so fringe that the government would call them crackpots. Now we have people coming out of government settings.
Oh, yeah, you got crackpots, huh?
This is real. So I think we all have to move together. The original people in ufology and the people that are actually coming out now saying this is real. Because otherwise, what's the point? There's no point being one against the other. I think it's really, what is the government really holding back from the public? We need to get it at all costs so we can move forward.
We sure do. Mark, you get the last closing comment here as we close out hour number 1 here. And it's interesting.
Oh, yeah, you got
And I don't wanna put
crackpots.
words in your mouth, something along the lines of demons. I mean, tell us a little more about that. But please continue with your comments.
Well, basically, Old Testament and New Testament, it's people that are studying UFOs have not read the Bible and aren't living that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, they're missing an opportunity. And I think what Darcy's saying is he has a great argument. I think he's right about the old school coming back. And what I find is that what he's talking about tonight is that we need to be open-minded about what these new people that are coming out, the new generation, that are talking and explaining what they think is going on from their experience. And I still think that in the long run, you're never going to find out. For example, they did say that China, we're worried about in the movie, the trailer, or one of the trailers I saw, that China and the U.S. are fighting for all this information and so forth. The U.S. had 50 years of experience with the doing their research from Roswell, and China didn't have that unless they stole it, which they probably did. So a lot of this information departments are so tight you can't get into them. And did you ever meet a guy by the name of Clifford Stone, Darcy?
I didn't meet him in person, but I'm very familiar with his story. And I have seen the videos of him crying about his non-human intelligence.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, what was his story?
Finished a grand masterpiece, grand art masterpiece.
Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, no, I want you, Darcy. Just describe what Mark's talking about in some detail so people understand.
So he worked for the military, and he said that he was called out to a crash site to have a psychic connection with
Oh, we got a little reverb
some
effect,
of the
huh?
beings that were still alive at the site. And he took part in the 2001 disclosure project put on by Dr. Greer, and gave his testimony there. There are some things that are a bit wishy-washy about his testimony.
Wishy-washy.
Over time, so I'm not like fully convinced, but very interesting story nonetheless, and it's very possible that there are, kind of psychics that are used to be brought in and speak to non-human intelligence. I don't know.
Well, Mark, thank you for your commentary. Always insightful here as we talk about these mysteries. Want to open our minds about these great mysteries that, well, hopefully through the work that many are doing, like Darcy Weir and others, we hopefully will be able to get more than just scratching the surface on this. So thank you, Mark, in Arizona. Appreciate it. Hope you have a wonderful holiday season. And I wanted to mention something, Darcy. I don't know how familiar you are with this website. Maybe extremely well. But people who've wondered about the government's, Freedom of Information Act, there's a website called governmentattic.org, governmentattic.org. And apparently, I've looked at this, they list so many of these freedom of information requests in the great detail. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're a sleuth that wants to learn more about what has been revealed, their Latin phrase is videre licet. And if you're not a scholar in Latin, here's the simple English. It's called, and I quote, it's permitted to see, end quote. Very interesting stuff. Are you familiar at all with that website that I just mentioned?
I'm actually looking at it right now. I see that they list PDFs from just back to November 24th so far. I mean, they've got really up-to-date stuff, and this is just a pretty cool source. So I'm going to check that out.
Absolutely. I always want to give out information for people to make their minds up. I mean, many people, obviously, the freedom of what we have in our country and many others hopefully continuing, is that you don't have to believe anything we're saying, but respectful as we are to the experts that we bring on the air here. And Darcy, I really appreciate you. I mean, we're going to go into hour number 2. I'd like to talk more about your documentaries, of course, so people can learn much more about the things that you've researched and spent so much of your life and time and money to develop so people can at least have an open mind on this and open back our minds, learning so much more about the mysteries that abound out there deep in the universe. But before we go to the top of the hour here, just bring up to me and to the audience, what is the most fascinating mystery of all this that you've uncovered in probably 2 minutes if you can explain it, and I'm sure you can. What's still the most incredible story that you've heard from anybody at this point in time?
Yeah, I think the fact that our high-ranking Navy and Air Force members are basically trying to intercept these objects, and they fire off, like ping pong balls, or, they just completely evade any detection or tracking when they don't want to. So it's like those things really show dominance to me, and I take the reports from pilots like Ryan Graves, Alex Dietrich, Dave Fravor very seriously, and those aren't the only pilots. There's pilots in Iran. Back in 1976, there was a massive event that happened, a mass witness sighting over Tehran, which is the capital city of Iran. At night, a massive UFO was flying in the airspace over their city, and the military there quickly scrambled a few fighter jets to intercept this thing. It seemed to have the ability to shut down their comms, shut down their tracking, shut down their weapon systems when they were within a mile or so of the object. And believe it or not, the whole city lost power. Subsequently, and this is like thousands of people that are experiencing this. Subsequently, the American Air Force flew over there to be debriefed. They wanted to know what happened, and the Iranian government and Air Force welcomed them with open arms. So amazing. I think this is a common occurrence.
More with our special guest, Darcy Weir of OccultJourneys.com. And also check out the website we just promoted to learn about more from Freedom of Information, governmentattic.org. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, more of the Dr. Sky Experience with your calls, like Stu in Brooklyn and others when we come back.
This is New York's talk leader, the crown jewel of talk radio. WABC New York, WRCR Haverstraw, 107.1 WLIR Hampton Bays. News first at 59 past the hour. 77 WABC News starts now.
Clearing skies on this Saturday, November 29th. Good morning, I'm Lisa Ritchie. Vladimir Putin says Russia is ready for serious talks about a Ukraine peace plan. Correspondent Daria Bondarchuk reports. Earlier, the U.S. President Donald Trump spoke of progress in negotiations with the parties to the conflict. The Kremlin earlier reiterated a key condition for a ceasefire, that its territorial gains in Ukraine be recognized by the international community. It's the first time Putin has spoken publicly about the peace plan since the U.S. recently started negotiating with Ukraine. President Trump says he's terminating any document that former President Biden allegedly used an auto pen to sign, saying the number of documents signed with the alleged auto pen was around 92%. He said an auto pen is not allowed to be used if approval isn't given by the president themselves. National Guard 20-year-old Sarah Beckstrom has died from her injuries after a gunman shot her and another guardsman on Wednesday in Washington, D.C. U.S. Attorney for D.C., Janine Pirro, gave an update on National Guardsman Andrew Wolf.
The other guardsman, of course, we still have hope. He's still in critical condition. We're doing everything we can to assist his family and to make sure that they have everything they need during this difficult time for them. We are all praying for Andrew Wolf.
The suspect, an Afghan national who worked with the U.S. to fight the Taliban, is still hospitalized as well. Jury selection begins Monday in the child abuse trial of Atlantic City's mayor and his wife. Mayor Marty Small and Atlantic City Schools Superintendent LaQuetta Small are both charged with emotionally and physically abusing their daughter. Prosecutors say Small repeatedly punched the then 16-year-old and beat her unconscious with a broom. The girl's mother is accused of repeatedly beating the teen with a belt and pulling her by the hair. We're just hearing about it now, but New York Knicks player Josh Hart was robbed at a Soho hotel a couple of months ago. James Flippen has the details.
Cops say Hart was staying at the Dominic Hotel back in September when he was robbed of about $185,000 worth of watches and jewelry. Apparently, he left those items in a duffel bag, left the room, and returning sometime later, realized they were gone. Somebody gained access to the room and made off with the jewelry. Authorities yet to identify any suspects in that case. James Flippin for 77 WABC News.
Your favorite restaurant's dining shed will be gone by Saturday. Head of the New York City Hospitality Alliance, Andrew Ridgey, says that's hard on small businesses.
It's too expensive to set up outdoor dining, then take it down, store it during the winter months, only to set it up again. Is cost prohibitive for small businesses.
Restaurant sidewalk cafes are allowed to stay up year-round, but the dining structures on the streets must come down Saturday for the colder months to allow for snow plowing. Ready or not, the season of gift buying and giving is here. Mark Mayfield has the numbers.
The National Retail Federation estimates a record number of shoppers, nearly 190 million, will do at least some shopping between now and Cyber Monday this year. 50% of consumers say they'll be gifting clothing and accessories. 43% say they plan to go with gift cards, which could push spending in that category past $29 billion. Meanwhile, for 32% of shoppers this holiday season, toys are the number one item. I'm Mark Mayfield.
UPS is grounding its fleet of MD-11 cargo planes indefinitely, weeks after a deadly plane crash in Louisville, Kentucky. Tammy Trujillo reports.
The planes will be re-inspected for possible repairs and will miss the holiday delivery season. According to a company memo Wednesday, Boeing's ongoing evaluation of the aircraft fleet shows that potential repairs may be more extensive than expected. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
A Belgian sheepdog is the winner of the National Dog Show. Soleil took home the Best in Show ribbon, beating out more than 1,900 dogs. Daniel Martin from North Carolina is the dog's handler and said Soleil is a professional who loves the crowd and the arena. The annual event is hosted by the Kennel Club of Philadelphia. This holiday season, help the 77 WABC Radio Foundation to feed those in need. Go to WABCFoundationCares.com. Join 77 WABC, AARP New York City, the Police Athletic League, Corsides and D'Agostino Supermarkets, and Nationwide Imaging Services as we deliver holiday meals to more than 5,000 families across the city, giving back to those in need. Go to WABCFoundationCares.com. 77 WABC Cares. In sports, the Giants hope their rookie quarterback can suit up for Monday's showdown. Jackson Dart cleared concussion protocol on Thursday. The 25th overall pick in April's draft missed the last two games after suffering the injury earlier this month against the Bears. Meanwhile, New York Jets player Chris Boyd is back in the hospital days after he was released for treatment of a gunshot wound, saying it's due to his health issues, but wouldn't elaborate. Your forecast overnight, clear, breezy, the low 33 degrees. Later on today, some nice bright sunshine for Small Business Saturday, the high 43. Sunday's outlook is cloudy with occasional rain and drizzle later in the day, and a high 48 degrees. It is clearing outside of our Midtown studios. I'm Lisa Ritchie. Remember, the news never stops at WABCRadio.com.
Always look to the sky. The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Hour number 2, ladies and gentlemen, continues here with the Dr. Sky Experience. 6 minutes after the hour, hoping and praying that your Thanksgiving weekend was everything you wanted it to be. And happy holidays to everybody listening in the vast audience here of Talk Radio 77 WABC. Hard to believe that this year is almost over, but of course, the Dr. Sky Experience talks with you about great subjects and the mysteries from worlds beyond, from astronomy, space, aviation, weather, celebrity guests in the mix, and stories proudly of American exceptionalism. A contact number, 1-800-848-9222. And let's thank our helmsman as we talk in Theater of the Mind, this great starship, the powerful 77 WABC, our helmsmen, both Tony and Bill, making sure the program sounds as good as you would expect it to do. Ladies and gentlemen, our special guest, if you're just joining us right now for this hour, hour number 2, is Darcy Weir. UFO researcher, documentarian, and he continues to talk with us about the great subjects that are out there. We had an earlier discussion about The Age of Disclosure, a new film by Dan Farah, available on Netflix and certain theaters across the nation. Welcome back. Thank you so much, Darcy. Let's go to the callers. We had a lot of people on the line. Let's say good morning if you're there. Stu in Brooklyn. Good morning. Your question or comments?
Good morning, gentlemen. I'm a sailor. When you're on the bridge of the ship in mid-ocean without light pollution, I can tell you, you see an awful lot of things that nobody has been able to explain away as stars or shooting or whatever. Hey, that's not why I called. Question I have is this. 3I Atlas is very much in the news. The comet. Is there any protocols that you use to analyze the data and say this fits the profile of a potential alien spaceship, or it really is what we say it is? It's just another comet.
Well, Darcy, if you don't mind, can I jump on this one? And I want to hear, of course, your opinions on this. You research deeply. But, ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking about 3I Atlas. What is it if you've never heard about it? Stu, you've heard about it. It's the third detection of an interstellar comet, meaning it's a comet that doesn't come from a cloud of material that, of course, they're controlled, these comets, by the gravity of the sun. This is from another star system, they believe. So to answer your question, how they can do the detection and analysis of this, it's mostly through spectroscopic observations. They take a telescope and they put this particular light of the object through the spectroscope and they see what chemical elements are coming off of this. Now, there's a certain individual out there who obviously talks about it as being potentially an interstellar craft. We really don't know, but all the evidence that we can talk about right now comes to us in the fact that it is distinctly a comet, but it might necessarily be a much larger object. It's coming through the plane of the solar system. The solar system is aligned some 60 degrees to the plane of this Milky Way, the big arm galaxy that we live in. So the simple thing is, it's more than likely a comet by observations from telescopes, the biggest being the James Webb. Darcy, please continue because, it still brings up some interesting observation points and questions.
Yeah, it's an interesting comet. It's a very rare one. We've never seen one this large enter our solar system from outside of it. So it is a, cosmic object. And it is made of nickel, which is something we haven't seen a huge quantity of in a comet before that's, interstellar. But it does have iron, and I think people are so confused about what this is because, A, there's a media machine out there that is pumping up so much drama and speculation about it.
Boy, did you say it well, Darcy. There you go. You took the words right out of my mouth because that's exactly, respectful to those that think it's an interstellar craft. It's obviously most likely a large comet.
Yeah, I mean, it has all the hallmarks of a comet. For example, it has a coma. What's a coma? That is all of the material that has sloughed off of the comet because it's heated up as it entered the solar system, heated up by the sun, radiation, all the stuff that's around our solar system starts to change it. And that's the ice, that's the dirt and, particles of all kinds of stuff, rock that are coming out of it. And the coma, because it is so large and it has a interesting composition, it has been green, it has been, which is also a sign of nickel, and it has a faint tail because unlike other comets that have huge comas, huge tails trailing behind it, this has had a coma, but a faint, smaller tail. And sometimes anomaly like light reflecting from the front of it because it's huge, and so on and so forth. People take all of these sort of anomalies, which are rare things we've seen a comet do, and they equate that to this is an alien craft. That's not the case.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you're hearing it from a man who does documentaries on the very subject. And like yourself, I mean, I've been observing comets. Not that I'm any better than anybody. For 40 years, I haven't discovered one. But I can just tell you that, ladies and gentlemen, we haven't gotten to our sky report there, and I want Stu to respond in a minute and give him the last word, is that the comet, if you had a rather large telescope, is actually visible, very faint. It's nothing that anybody can see in city lights. It's nothing you can probably see in maybe even darker areas unless you had a massive telescope or a large one. It lies in the constellation of Virgo in the morning, and it pops its head up. But the good news, it's heading away from the solar system, and it's going to pass the Earth, ladies and gentlemen, closest on December the 19th, by the incredibly close, not close distance, kidding, of 130 million miles. This is incredible. So it's going to pass us, and it's obviously nothing to worry about. But Stu, you've been patient. You've been hearing both of us. Let's hear from you finally and your closing comment. Go ahead, please.
I would be curious about what the temperature profile is of a comet traveling through space. And my problem is, among other things, I like to write, working on a novel, which has nothing to do with this. But it brings to mind, if I wanted to hide my presence, why couldn't I protect the comet and glide the orbit into an area that I want to get to without being intercepted in some way? However, the question is, how hard is that thing moving when it's moving through space?
It's moving 130,000 miles an hour, Stu. I know Darcy knows this, but you're looking at a comet. See, I've had the luxury here in Arizona with the darker skies and maybe people in other dark locations. It's fascinating because the tail of these comets is amazing if you see them in different pictures. They're hundreds of millions of miles in length, and what's really happening on the surface, not to get overly technical, is that they're covered with primitive ices, maybe even, as some people say, how life occurred on the Earth by a process called panspermia, where cometary material of organics seeded the Earth. But let's go on to this. The particular surface of these comets has organic material, and when it goes and gets closer to the sun, or closer to a star, the object goes from a frozen state directly to a gas and bypasses liquidity called sublimation. And all that material being sandblasted from the star, meaning the sun, produces this material coming off the thing, just like you saw in the back of a tailpipe of a car. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Cometary, emissions are also in the realm of carbon monoxide. How about that? So, Stu, you get the last word. I'm sorry, we're going deeper into this, but
well,
good information.
You're talking about a lot of temperatures. Behind the fusion process in a magnetic blanket, because there's nothing on Earth that can contain the millions of degrees of heat involved.
Right.
Maybe some smart extraterrestrials could do the same thing and use the cover of a comet similarly.
It sounds like a novel that we would want to read from you, in all due respect. I think that's the coolest thing I've heard, right? Darcy used the comet as a cloaking device so that you can penetrate undetected into the realm of planet number 3, where simply we've been all trying to get along, and it hasn't worked for
maybe. I think the very last analogy I would make about, like, sort of rebuttal to that analogy is, if they're coming into our solar system and following this comet, if that comet came from another neighboring star, even at the speed it's traveling at, it would have taken tens of thousands to maybe millions of years. So that alien species that's coming behind a super slow comet, basically traveling way slower than the speed of light, must be the Flintstones.
And you know what's happening, too, on a serious note, Stu, if you're still with us, there's another comet. There's 3 or 4 comets that are in the vicinity of observation. I've been watching a couple. Comet Lemon was pretty bright. It's still in the sky for those that have the telescopes. And we haven't gotten to our sky report, but here it is, getting right to the point. There's a comet right now that's disintegrating right before our eyes. And what does that mean? The nucleus is splitting up because it's not structurally sound because of the great shock wave that it gets from our star, the sun. So I've watched Comet West when I was up at a place called Garrick Mountain in Patterson. Everybody knows where that is in the New York metro area. And we watched one morning Comet West. Look it up, 1976. And Darcy and Stu, we saw literally the fragmentation. The comet one night was a nucleus. The next morning it had 3. And the next day the whole thing separated. The power of the sun can destroy these comets. But in this particular case, evidence shows us at least that much, right, Darcy, that it's probably just a large comet of another star system. Thank you, Stu in Brooklyn. Appreciate your time. Let's go on and let's continue with the callers. They've been patient. Max in Manhattan, good morning. You're on with Darcy Weir. How you doing? All right, we say good morning to Tony and Clifton. Hope your Thanksgiving was great. How you doing this morning?
Yes. Yes, hi Darcy, hi Dr. Sky. Thank you for taking my call. So I'm just a few seconds away from Garrett Mountain, so it's really an amazing place.
It is amazing. I had a lot of fun up there watching those things. We used to do public programs for the people to come out. I believe Friday or Saturdays we'll be up there with telescopes, and that's when the lights weren't as bright as they are, but a nice place to remember.
Nice. So, I was thinking that everything that's sort of being interpreted, like you guys were talking about, what people say about everything, really has to do with who the leadership is. And, the space program has been like dead. And now we are looking, actually on December 3rd is the hearing, Dr. Sky, for Jared Isaacman for NASA. And I see everything in part based on the vision of the leader. And I was looking to see, of course, the hearing is December 3rd. I hope he'll do very well. But
I hope so, too.
There was a paper that was leaked, and he acknowledged it, and it gave some of his vision. It was fairly recently. It was a 62-page document. And one of the things he said, he talked about aliens. And he said NASA's observatory, in this little report that was leaked, NASA's observatory to finally find aliens as it hunts for habitable worlds. And that, it's all technology and vision. And, to find aliens here, it's a good idea to see where they're coming from. So I like the way he thinks already. What do you guys think? Do you know anything about his other visions? I think he's done some things on podcasts about it, but he seems to be a great visionary for the program, right?
Darcy, your comment. I think Tony brings up some very interesting points about that.
Yeah, well, the new NASA administrator, it's an interesting take that he might be part of the disclosure process in terms of saying to the public, we're not alone. And NASA would be an important part of that because they're supposed to be the chief science nerds in North America, right? Let's just be honest. They're supposed to be the tip of the spear. And they're supposed to validate science as credible or non-credible. So the fact that he's talking about that, now I will elaborate and say he's most likely discussing the technology behind James Webb, the space telescope. That has the ability to look at distant stars, distant planets, in all kinds of light spectrums that the human eye can't see, electromagnetic wavelengths, and see whether a planet has water, methane, which usually is produced by life, and it's an exhaustive life, as you know. Sometimes we pass gas. And it's able to see all these hallmarks of a civilization, right? Maybe technology or a Dyson sphere or something around a distant star. So I think, and many people have supposed that James Webb has already even made